back, listeners, to the BizBlend podcast, where business meets personal growth and real conversations spark real change. I'm your host, Sana, and today's episode is one that's especially close to my heart. We're diving into a topic that impacts so many of us: women in leadership, and what it really takes to lead with authenticity in today's world. And my guest is the incredible Dr. Jessica Edwards, a board certified family medicine physician, healthcare entrepreneur, executive MBA candidate, wife, and mother of two. One of her children is on the autism spectrum, and her journey is balancing career, caregiving, and purpose driven entrepreneurship is nothing short of inspiring for all of us. And as the founder of Zara Medical, Dr. Jessica is challenging the outdated norms of healthcare and creating systems that actually work for both doctors and patients. And I know many of you listening, especially the women who are building businesses, leading teams, or carrying invisible loads, you will feel deeply seen by her story. So today, in this episode of BizPlan, we'll be talking leadership, burnout, health equity, and what it looks like to create change from the inside out without losing yourself along the way. So let's quickly get into it. So, Dr. Jessica, welcome to the show, and it's an absolute honor to have you with us.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, Dr. Jessica, if you can share the inspiration behind uh, creating Zara Medical, and also how did burnout influence your leadership style and your decision to become a healthcare entrepreneur?
Yeah, I would say that my journey with this started after I left my first job, after residency and fellowship.
Mhm.
There's a stat that, about half the doctors leave their first job, which I was one of those people. And unfortunately, I was in a situation where I had multiple patients who were pregnant and still needed OB care. And I was leaving that practice. And so I was looking into working with the local hospital systems, decided I wanted to have a little bit more flexibility with my schedule. And so my husband and I sort of put our heads together and started working on, how do we make a lean, small practice where we can serve our community, taking insurance, not just, being cash only, and making sort of our own, way of doing things. You'd be surprised how many doctors' offices still operate on paper. You'd be surprised how many doctors' offices don't utilize AI to make things more simple or utilize text for younger demographics of patients. And so I really sort of walked into it with the fact that I was sort of over the way that, our system was operating, and I just decided to make my own way. And so in doing that, we started off, with the lean practice. We got a very simple to use electronic health record. We got all of the, requirements, certifications, and things like that. And we just did it. And so, it was a great practice. And then COVID happened, obviously, a year later. Once I had my daughter, in 2022, I was like, well, maybe it'll be easier to work for someone else. Horrible mistake. And so I found myself being more burnt out, even though I was making more money working for someone else. And so back in May of last year, I just decided and I made a promise to my husband and my kids. I said, I'm never going to work for anyone else full time ever again. I want to have control of our schedule, our flexibility, so that I can be a good wife and mom as well as a doctor.
Wow, wow. That is so heartwarming and inspiring, Dr. Jessica. Lovely, lovely. And this was something consciously that you decided within your heart, and you said to your husband that yes, I have decided I will be mindfully uh, decided that you will be a good wife, good mother, and you'll be an entrepreneur, and you'll take control of your time, your schedule, your well-being in your own hands for you and for your loved ones. So that is really, really inspiring.
Yeah, I felt like it had to happen, like, I couldn't
Yeah.
wait because there's so many doctors leaving medicine right now because
Exactly. Mm.
yeah, I mean, they just feel like there's no way out, and so I decided, I said, "You know what? There has to be a way out," and I think technology has been um, a wonderful,
And you,
tool to actually help
yeah.
streamline things to decrease burnout.
Yes, yes. That is such an important point you mentioned, especially for all the doctors out there in the industry. So uh and I know burnout can either break us or become the spark that changes everything. So uh
Right.
how do you, Dr. Jessica, define leadership now, especially uh, as a woman navigating not only healthcare but also family life with a neurodivergent child?
Yeah, I think that, to be honest with you, I think leadership is having a vision of what you want. I think from there, it's making all the building blocks and really being a person that is transparent and thoughtful in all interactions with people from, administrative assistants in your company up until,
Mm.
the executive officers. And so for me, I feel like my leadership style is, leading from within. So, and empowering others around me because I feel like when you give people the opportunity to expand their horizons and learn new things, it helps. I mean, leadership isn't always, roses and flowers. Sometimes you have to make difficult decisions, but I think making those decisions with conviction and data is something that I have grown to become more comfortable with because I often feel like, as women who are leaders, we're nurturers by, definition. So, giving our all, doing things, staying late, coming in early, doing all of this sort of stuff, that doesn't necessarily translate into success, right? It's figuring out
Mhm.
how to do the job the best way. And then also make sure that you're empowering those around you.
Hmm. Hmm. That is so empowering. And also, as you mentioned about the role of technology, uh, and you mentioned a very important point that so many doctors, they are still using uh, they're not using today's technology, not using AI or automation, which can really digitally transform, in way they treat the patients or they lead, communicate, and also build sustainable practices. So, uh, if you can share some examples, I mean, how do you see today's technology transforming the role of doctors?
I think technology has the opportunity to really create something special. And I say that in the sense that, with my practice now, we have like an AI auto attendant that has, conversational style format. So my patients can ask any, specific questions that they have about anything. And it's able to actually take a load off of the front desk staff because oftentimes, when you walk in a doctor's office, people are just constantly on the phone. Phones are ringing off the hook. And I think that can create a negative patient experience. Also think with automation, there are ways to do, menial follow-up tasks that would often take, I'd say even 5 to 10 minutes to do that the computer can do automatically. So for instance, now with my practice, when I sign off my note and put in, when I want the patient to follow up, there's an automation that happens that sends that to my staff so they can make sure that patients do follow up. And I think that it's a great adjunctive tool to, one, I would say, from a business owner perspective, let me put that hat on right now. The business owner perspective, you can sort of um, create better workflows for your staff. And so, I don't think that the computer or, AI can completely replace people, but I do think that it's great as far as like accountability. You can see what things have been done, what things haven't. There are also ways to, set benchmarks and it helps you to run a lean business. I would say from the place of a practitioner, I would say that it's incredible to be able to like look up things in the moment. I was on with the patient earlier and I knew which cream I wanted to prescribe, but I wasn't sure how large the of a quantity I should prescribe based on, what sizes of the thing were available. So I literally went on ChatGPT. What is the dispense size of Elidel for, seborrheic dermatitis? And I was able to put that in, and in 1 second, I had exactly what I needed. So I think from that perspective, it helps to make sure that the care that's being done, is efficient, that it is correct. And then I also think from an efficiency perspective, we utilize an EHR that allows us to basically press record. I can focus on the patient and it
Mhm.
basically will type and do, I'd probably say it does about 98% of my notes exactly how I want them. So I can spend my time with my patients instead of focusing on documentation.
Hmm. That is really, really. I think it's definitely shifting the identity of the modern physician, and
Right.
also talking about Zara Medical. So it isn't just a clinic; it is a model for what accessible, efficient, patient-centered care can look like. So can you walk us through how you built it differently and how it reflects your values as a both a physician and a mother?
Yeah, I would say, I built Zara to be the healthcare practice that I haven't experienced, right? So, I really wanted to focus on sort of 3 tiers. One, I wanted the care to be personalized. So, I didn't want there to be a one size fit all approach, with patients. I wanted the care to be also accessible where patients can
Mhm.
reach us if they need it. And so part of the problem with, current practices, if a patient needs to follow up in 3 months, the office will put the patient on the schedule. They're holding that slot. And then a couple days before, the patient might be busy, they might be out of town. Life happens, in between doctor's appointments. And so they're not able to, follow up, and then, that's lost revenue when that appointment gets canceled. So, instead of doing things that way, we have a post-dated, sort of AI automation system that'll message patients when they're due for a follow-up visit. And
Mm.
so it's a lot easier for patients to get that access. In addition, we try our best to make sure that our response times are quick. And so I think oftentimes that's some of the pain points that happen within primary care. Sometimes you have to wait 3, 4, 5 days to hear back. We have multiple
Yeah,
modalities for our patients to be able to contact us, which is great.
that is lovely. That is lovely. Yeah, definitely feels like a blueprint for what's possible when women lead with purpose. So that is really, really inspiring, Dr. Jessica.
Well,
So
thank you. I think my next thing too is to not
Mhm.
just make this the model for my practice, but to show other young, physicians how to do this model as well, which I think is so crucial. So
Mm.
giving back to the next generation as well is something that I'm very passionate about.
Absolutely, absolutely. And now talking in the broader spectrum. So, in your opinion, Dr. Jessica, um, how can women leaders create systemic changes in industries which are still built on outdated, often male dominated structures?
I think it's one, it's showing up, right? Like, I think, it's one thing to be told no, when you show up, or, oh, you're not this, you're not that. One is showing up, it's learning the ropes, right? Like, you can't just start off and say, like, hey, I'm going to be the CEO of this health tech company. It comes with experience. I think working under companies to see what they're doing wrong will definitely give great idea for how to address those pain points to become successful. Because I think if you're not addressing pain points, you're not really doing much. And so I think if you're solving a problem for people, there's a book called Blue Ocean Strategy
Mhm.
that really talks a lot about this concept, which has been a game changer for me. And so, really, what I would say is that you have to, one, learn the ropes. Secondly, you have to be able to, create a lane addressing pain points. And then finally, I think it also comes down to just doing it. Like I hate to use the Nike phrase, but it's just,
Yeah.
it's just do it because there was a quote that I saw the other day from a female entrepreneur. She's more so like in the hip hop space and she doesn't have the I wouldn't say, like, the nicest reputation, but people know she's, like, about her business, I would say, in that sense, right?
Mm.
But the quote that she said, it really changed my mindset, and it says, "No one claps for discipline, no one cheers for consistency, but one day everyone will notice. Show up every day to fix your life. Do it alone, do it tired, do it scared, and just do it."
Wow.
And that's always kind of been my mantra, but to, like, hear that out loud was incredible for me.
That is so beautiful. That is so, so true and beautiful. Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And another aspect of this is, often as entrepreneurs and, mompreneurs, yeah, I guess it's really a buzzword, but still it's so important that, you know, setting boundaries and protecting your energy because you have to show up every day.
Correct.
So what lessons have you learned about both of these, aspects while scaling a mission driven, a purpose driven business?
Yeah, I think, it's a really good question. I think oftentimes, with boundary setting, it's intentional. And I think that one of the things that has changed my life personally has been really getting into the space of being grateful. And that's really how I try to start every single day. I think about what my priorities are. I think about who I'm doing this for, right? And my boundaries reflect that. So, I took a job a couple years back and the CEO would like literally call me every like Sunday um for like I mean you just call every Sunday. I'm like, "Oh my god." And so I was, trying to like, be nice and
Yeah.
because he wasn't available, end of Friday and Saturday because of his religion, but he would call every single Sunday, I'm trying to spend time with my family. And so eventually, I said, "Hey, like we need to kind of keep these
Mm.
conversations during the week because although I'm on salary, although I'm watching things on the weekend with the clinic, I have a family also and I need to spend time with them." And so I think, not being afraid to say no, I think is one of the hardest lessons that I learned, but it's the most necessary. Because at the end of the day, my husband, he also has his business degree from Rutgers. You know, you have to preserve yourself. And, my mom also says you can't pour from an empty cup. So I think saying no is not something that is usually in our DNA as women, but it becomes interwoven. The more times you experience, or the more times you let people I wouldn't even say get over, but, the more that you let people show that you don't have boundaries, the more they're gonna exploit them, and it starts off as something small, and then it'll just compound and build and build, and so for me, I'm determined to make sure that I'm protecting myself and my family first, and I feel like taking that mantra has really helped me become a better clinician. It's helped me become more of a transparent clinician as well, and being able to work from home, if people see one of my kids come in my room and ask me for something, that's accepted. It's not like, "Oh, your kid shouldn't be here." They're not saying that because I've shown, like, my family is my number one priority, and they know that, and they respect that.
Mm. And this is something I wish more and more people talked about, especially the emotional toll of building something while being everything to everyone. I think
Correct.
more and more
It's
conversations should be there.
yeah, it's a lot, and I think that, support is key. I think, being in like-minded groups with other women and strategizing, and then also, taking that not so nice advice from male counterparts is helpful because, especially like when it comes to the whole negotiation about pay. A lot of times as women, we're afraid to ask for more pay and men will just do it. And so, when I was negotiating my salary before I decided to, go a different direction and start my own practice last year, my husband said, he said, "Why don't you just tell him I want XYZ amount per month and just see what he says?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't think I can do that." And he was like, "Well, why not?" And I was like, "Well, I don't, want him to think, I'm being rude or this and this and that." And he's like, "What you say doesn't really matter. It matters if they want to do it or not." So he's like, "You could ask for less money and they could still say no because they just don't want to work with you, right? And so I asked that, and I was able to find out that this guy was not serious, and I didn't waste my time going back and forth with negotiations, and that saved me probably months and years off while I
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Sometimes it's better to be straightforward.
Correct. I do, and I think as women, we can't keep beating around the bush about things, like, I think we have to be more and it's not saying that you have to be nasty, you don't have to be mean, you don't have to be hateful, but you can just say, "No," and it's okay to do that, and I think as women also, it's okay to restructure because I think oftentimes we get in this mindset like, "Oh, I've gotta make this work," and you end up basically, like, ruining yourself trying to make this business concept work when sometimes pivoting is a good thing. It's not always a bad thing, or taking a different direction and saying, well, how can I do this differently to work for me and my family, you know?
Yeah, true. So true. So true. Great, great. And on the flip side, let's talk about this. Healthcare. I mean, there are so many nuances around healthcare. It's often seen as a rigid and slow to change. And
Mhm.
uh, you know, do you think yet that entrepreneurship within the system is truly the answer, or are we just creating parallel solutions for more privileged populations? I mean that how do we make sure that innovation reaches the people who need it most?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I would say that I think physicians with business acumen need to be leading the charge with that.
Mm.
And, I remember when I started, researching my MBA, I was like, man, I was like, how does my husband make these like just sound decisions that are completely like data driven and like does not feel any way about it? And I was like, I don't know how he does it. And so when I decided to get my MBA, I learned about that. And so I think doctors that have business acumen, MBAs, are going to be the ones that are going to change the system because you're kind of getting a 2 for 1 special, if that makes sense, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
one of those things, you just have to do it, and I think the more that we start having these uncomfortable conversations, with ourselves as women to just go for it and give it a try. If we need to pivot, pivot quickly. I think that says more than anything.
I agree with that. I agree with that. Right. And what would you say to other women who feel stuck between their passion and the pressure to conform to traditional career paths or caregiving roles?
I think, it's never gonna be a balance, it's kind of a juggle. Like balance is really a juggle,
Yeah.
and I think once you set your priorities for what you care about, so, like, if your family is the number 1 priority for you, any opportunity that you're gonna take is going to keep them in mind, and I think that's part of what has, been I wouldn't even say the downfall, but it's been, I think for women that have just traditionally only focused on career, you end up losing in the end because your kids grow up without you. And I remember when my son was younger, I was delivering babies in the hospital all the time, and I was doing this. My husband was fighting with insurance companies for us to be paid, and I just realized I'm here, but I'm not really here, right?
Yeah.
And so I think really making your priorities reflect in career parts of your life also, I think is the key, and I think for most people, they don't. They say, "Oh, well, I'm gonna make this decision for my family, or I'm gonna make this different decision for my career." I think it should be all in one. Like, I would never take at this point, I would never take a job that says you have to be in the office, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, even though it could be a good job because I wouldn't be able to get my children ready for school in the morning. I wouldn't be able to spend time getting those cuddles in and combing my daughter's hair myself. And so I think once you set your priorities, I think the rest will follow and you'll make the decisions that need to be made in order to make sure that you are present for your family and then also operating at the best of your ability in your career.
I couldn't agree more with you because, uh, you know, when we have our priorities set right, it brings us so much clarity. It gives us the direction in which we have to take that first step. Because
Yep.
I know that, that jittering, that anxiety, that fear, which creeps up in our heart, in our mind, especially thinking about a change or our second act in our career or that transformation. So that's such a brilliant first step to start with, setting the priorities right.
Great.
Wow, wow, Dr. Jessica. So if our listeners would like to connect with you to seek some inspiration and also explore more about Zara Medical, and if they wish to share their insights on opinions on leadership, burnout, women in leadership, how they can do that.
So they can actually reach out to me via email at hello at zaramedical.com. Our website is www.zaramedical.com. We have our job board on there. We have, kind of our patient philosophy, how we do things. I also write blog posts a couple times a week as well. And so yeah, that's how they can connect with me. And I'm an open book. I always love interacting with everyone.
Lovely, lovely. I'll have all the links there in the show notes. And thank you so much, Dr. Jessica, for showing us up today with clarity, vulnerability, and power. And your journey definitely reminds us that leadership isn't about having all the answers, but it's more about being willing to ask better questions, challenge the system, and create new paths, even when it is hard. So thank you so much.
You are so very welcome. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for having this podcast. I wish my younger self would have had these podcasts when I was younger.
Wow. Excuse me. And to everyone listening, if today's conversation has sparked something in you, maybe a shift in how you lead, parent, or simply exist, I hope you take it and run with it. And don't forget to subscribe to us, share this episode with a friend, your family, your loved one, your colleague, and drop a review if it resonated. And as always, keep blending business with boldness, with grace, because that's where the magic happens. Until next time, I'm your host, Sana, and this is BizBlend. Thank you.